Hi, and a big warm welcome to Global Winning Women Live. If this is your first time tuning in to one of our chats, then thank you so much for joining us. You're in for a lovely surprise because I'm about to introduce you to the beautiful soul, Cathy Ballard. Cathy and I met quite by chance, actually, at an event in early 2013. And gosh, Cathy and I we ended up talking for a couple of hours, and it just seemed that we had so much synergy. So it isn't surprising that Cathy is now also one of our Winning Women ambassadors for our Central London group, as well as running her own business, helping female entrepreneurs express their vision, their purpose, and brand, and doing so really coming from the heart. Now, Cathy believes that having a brand that's aligned with your passion and purpose is key to you being able to reach out and to serve more people. And she's got a really big vision to help women wake up to their feminine power and inner guidance and support them as they head towards creating that life and the business that they desire. And that really means coming from the heart in a more conscious, balanced and interconnected way of living and working. Oh, Cathy, we all need you. Welcome to the call.
Thank you, Alison. It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, I'm absolutely delighted. And, we've got about 45 minutes to really get deep on this. So, Cathy, I know that your background very much was in graphic design. How about telling us a little bit about your journey? What's happened? What's led you to be doing what you're doing now? And, how did you develop your particular style of working with people? I'm really curious about that. I'm always intrigued about people's stories and, how they start off and where they are today.
Absolutely. No, that's something that I'm really passionate about. I've always been really interested in people and what their stories are too. So that totally resonates, and that is quite a large part of what I do when I work with people. But you mentioned my graphic design background. But once I'd actually, I'd always been really creative as a child, and I losing myself in drawing and painting and all that kind of thing was just something that really lit me up, and it allowed me to go off into my imagination. And I think when I used to really get into my emotions when I was painting as well, I could really paint from the heart. I was never very good at sticking at things for very long because, you get a lot of artists who are really tortured and who spend ages creating artworks, pouring their real tortured feelings into it. But I always seem to move through mine so quickly, so I could never finish a painting or a drawing. So everything that I did I ended up following kind of a more practical path in doing creative stuff. So I ended up doing graphics, and I was at university in Leeds, and I'd graduated, and it was during a recession in around 1991, and when I finished, I actually did printmaking with graphic design, so it was very unvocational, and there was just no work, and I couldn't find work I was probably unemployed for about a year, just doing lots of arts and crafts and trying to sell things on a market and that kind of thing. And it got very depressing, and I just really had the strongest feeling that I had to get out of the country and go and do something else. And so I ended up finding a TEFL course, which is teaching English as a foreign language, and I signed myself up onto that. And it was one of the most terrifying things I'd ever done because I hated being visible. I'd always struggled at school with things like being bullied, so my visibility issues and actually standing at the front of a room and being the teacher, that was incredibly difficult for me. So, but in order to get out of the country and, go earn some money overseas, I had to get over this. So I forced myself to do it. And eventually I chose to go to Japan, and so I was going to go out there and set myself up as an English teacher. And as I was on the plane, I'd never travelled anywhere on my own before, so I was pretty terrified. And I was on the plane. I had to do a transit in Sri Lanka, and I just had this real strong intuitive feeling that my bags hadn't made it on the plane again when I got back on my way to Japan. And it was so strong that when I got to the terminal in Narita, that, you know, I was quite calm when my bags weren't there. They didn't make it. So unfortunately, it was such a difficult journey to where I was going to. I had another 2 days travel to get up to Hokkaido, where I was going to stay. I would never have managed to carry that bag along with everything else I had. And so I got there quite calmly, and then the next day my backpack turned up by the postal service, and it was perfectly timed, and it was, you know, it was just one of those amazing things. But this voice, this inner guidance was really, really strong. And from, you know, Japan was just the first place that I went to, but I really hooked into this intuitive feeling, and I used to go and buy a one-way ticket and just decide, where do I need to be in the world now? And
wow.
It led me all over the place. And for each country I would go to, it was like, okay, where do I need to go to today? And then I would make a decision based on what my kind of inner feeling would lead me to. And eventually, I travelled all around Japan, and I was working there for a couple of years. And I took myself off to India and Nepal for about 7 months. I was really interested in yoga and, you know, exploring consciousness. And that's, I had quite a big wake up in India, as many people do. And it was sort of I got a real sense of pulling all the parts of me into one clear kind of sense of who I was. Because India is just so mad that you can't be like anyone else. You can only be you, because there's no reference points, because it's just so crazy. Wow. And I found me there, and I was like finding a faith, I suppose, and a real sense of how spirit was working with me, and along with this inner guidance. Excuse me. And so that was a really big wake up. And I think from India, I came back to the UK for a little while, but I wasn't here for long before I could feel this like urge to go again. And this time it took me to South America, and South and Central America, actually. I knew I had to get to Mexico City this time, and I didn't know why. I thought maybe I was going to get a job there. And I actually did find some part-time work, but I was working as a receptionist in a hostel that used to, it also had a function to have international volunteers come and stay, and then the organisation would send them out to work with the street children or women's cooperatives, and, you know, it's a real socially aware place. And it attracted really nice people and interesting people. And this spiritual teacher from New Zealand came and stayed. And we ended up hitting it off. We did some meditation together and some energy work. And he invited me to help him set up a retreat centre in New Zealand. And that's what I did. So that was my next kind of step. And I ended up going over to New Zealand. We built actually almost from scratch. We built and ran the centre for about 5.5 years.
Wow.
And it was an amazing time. And I used to run retreats and do energy healing, and it was all about personal and spiritual development. We run meditation circles, all that sort of thing. And yeah, it was just one of the most phenomenal periods of my life, really.
My goodness me.
Yeah, so I've got those two really different backgrounds, my kind of creative graphics side and the spiritual kind of personal development side. So eventually I left there and I came back to the UK. But I went back to doing graphics, actually. I had been in a relationship with Keith Layton, who had run the centre. Mm-hmm. And when we broke up, I went back to doing graphics, and I worked in Wellington as a designer, and then came back to the UK, and I worked in a really good design consultancy in central London for about 4.5 years, but I could still feel this other side of me was so strong, pulling me to go and do more healing work, or and I'd studied all sorts of different therapies. I did NLP and EFT, so neuro-linguistic programming, emotional freedom techniques. I did journey work. I'm trained at Reiki master level, and I also did kinesiology foundation, all sorts of things, just looking for what it was that I'm meant to be doing. Yes. And I just couldn't find it. And yet I knew I had all of this value that in me that I wanted to share with people, and I didn't know how to get it out, and I was so frustrated. But in the end, I gave up. So I gave up my design job, and I thought, right, I'm going to go freelance, and at the same time explore who I'm meant to be and what I'm meant to be doing. And I ended up getting so frustrated that I was kind of meditating and thinking, okay, just point me in the right direction, show me a sign of what I'm meant to do. And funnily enough, I got the sign I got was, you need to find a coach. And about 2 days later, I met my coach, and she was amazing. And I'd had this vision that I wanted to start a women's personal development group and share everything that I'd learned, really, through everything I'd done in New Zealand, and then everything that I'd been learning since I've been back in the UK. And so I set up my group locally to where I live. I'm in Hertfordshire, and it was called the Aphrodite Club. And this is the most terrifying step I think I'd ever taken, because I was terrified of, as I mentioned before, the teaching thing. Just it's the visibility issues that cripple me or have crippled me in the past. And I used to go to seminar after seminar and workshop after workshop, not necessarily learning so much, but just looking at the speaker, the presenter, and thinking, how are you doing that? How can I do that? And I just never knew how I could do it. And so this was the block I'd had. And my coach actually helped me then, helped me get through that and helped me create a business model around it.
Wow.
Plus I was doing, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, it's so true, that saying, what we resist persists. But yet you knew that was part of your purpose of what you should be doing.
Oh, it was so frustrating. Yeah, for years, watching other people doing what I knew I should be doing, and I just felt like, no, I can't. Who am I to stand up there? Everyone will laugh, and no one will want to listen. I'm not loud and sort of extroverted enough is one of my biggest blocks. That's what I told myself.
Oh my goodness me, the stories we tell ourselves.
I know, aren't they? So eventually I did
with your coach, you set up this group?
I set the group up, and every time I did it, I got a little bit more confident, and but it didn't make money, and I'd never been able to make money properly from the giving that I'd done through my healing work. I don't know. It was. I think this happens for so many people who are healers and therapists. We struggle with the money side and doing the things that are really natural and easy for us. It's difficult to charge for it. So I was doing graphics at the same time and trying to run my own graphic design company. And I was just really struggling financially, because I was putting so much time and energy into the thing that I loved and just making enough money through doing the odd design job. So it wasn't a very good way of living. And I then realised I have to do something about my money stuff. And again, following my gut feeling, it was like I found another coach who was, that was her thing. And I learned so much from working with her. It was all about really shifting my belief system, and she worked in a way that was so similar to how I'd used to work with people at the retreat centre in New Zealand, doing energy work and things that, I'd really shied away from the whole kind of spiritual aspect, thinking, oh, people won't accept that and they'll think I'm weird and, how can you put that in business? And then here she was, and she has a huge following and she's a real trailblazer in this country and makes incredibly good money from it and teaches other people how to do that. So she was such an inspiration to me, and I realised that I had a real lot to share with people and a lot of value that I could give, and that it had some worth. So that was my big wake up. And I think since then, my business has really taken off, and I've brought everything that I do together. So I've put my branding, which was my passion that I love from my graphic design. Mm-hmm. And because when I do branding with people, it's about asking them those questions and finding their story. Like you were talking at the beginning about, people are so interesting and finding out what it is that's their passion and what lights them up and what do they love and how do they give value and what's their vision for their business. I love all that. And so I realised that was the bit that I needed to put into what my business was, and I could bring all these different parts of me together. Mm-hmm. And that I came up with my program, my core program. It's probably about 18 months ago now. It's called Brand from the Heart, and that's what I've been working on, and that's what I work with my one-to-one clients, and I'm just putting some programs together, and so that's kind of, I help people now bring all of their bits together about what they've done and work with them from their story and help them create their brand that's really aligned with their heart and their purpose.
Brilliant.
That's
oh, Cathy,
that was quite a long answer, wasn't it? Sorry.
It was, but it's so interesting, and there's so much learning in there. And I think, when we, as we've just said, when we share these stories, it kind of like people listening resonates, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me as well. And, so there's so much value in sharing that story, and thank you so much. But I'm a little bit curious now because, what does it really mean to have a brand that's aligned with your heart? That's the first part of the question. And then also, if you could just bring into that as well, what are the benefits to working in that way, to being branded in that way?
Well, to me, coming from the heart or creating a brand from your heart, it's all about being authentic.
Okay.
Everybody is so unique, and that uniqueness comes from your story. Mm-hmm. So my take on branding is that we have like an energetic signature, mm-hmm. and I believe that we transmit this from our heart. There's a lot of I know that there's a lot of research that's gone into actually how the heart works as opposed to the brain, and I'm not going to explain it now because I'm definitely not the expert on it, but there's a huge amount of power in the heart, and we transmit who we're being at any given moment into the into our environments. It's people pick up on that energy, and when you're really aligned with your heart and it's part of your core business, when you can put your story into your brand, which is all the things that you've learned and that you've discovered and that you've grown from, and that you can share with other people, and then there's your talents and your abilities and the values, the things that are important to you in life and that are your sort of moral guide map, I suppose you'd say. And mm-hmm. then there's your personality, really communicating that across, and what lights you up, your passion, what do you love doing. When you put your truth and what your message is, or what you really stand for in the world, what's important to you. When you can put your sense of what your bigger purpose is, if you can align with that and your vision about where you want to take yourself.
Your big why.
Yeah, absolutely. And I call it your tribe as well. When you know who the people are that you absolutely love working with, and that you know that when you work with them, you're doing your best work. When you can bring all of that together and really hold that is your signature that you're transmitting. And like any in science, as you know, like energies attract. So when you're vibrating with that resonance and you market yourself, your ideal clients who are out there's lots of your ideal clients out there, when they see you or they pick up on you, they will be instantly attracted because you resonate in a similar way and you'll be drawn together. And that's kind of how I sense branding. When you brand from the heart, that's how it really works.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you so much for sort of explaining that a little bit more, because there's lots of branding experts out there, you know. And in the day and age that we're living in right now is so key, because I think we've moved away from this whole we're allowing women particularly are allowing our creativity to shine through our businesses. You know, I talk about it all the time, how we're creating jobs or businesses that didn't even exist many years ago. Well, only a couple of years ago, you know, a few years ago. And I think society has kind of conditioned us to be a certain way, but women are beginning to start really throwing out the rule book now and saying, actually, no, this is what I stand for, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to deliver my business. And as you said, you know, that like attract like, when we're really aligned to that, we find those people, or we attract those people to us. And it's incredibly powerful. It really is, you know, and I really vouch for this, in as much as with Winning Women, I have not, well, when I first started my business, I tried very hard, pushing all the time to go down the typical, this is how you build a business with certain strategies, etc., etc. But when I started coming out of my head and moving more into my heart, what I realized, that's where all the magic lies. It really does. And, you know, as Winning Women has grown with ambassadors like yourself coming on board, I've really not had to push for that at all. It's, you know, women have been attracted to our philosophy, what we're all about in Winning Women. So there's a prime example that, you know, when you're really aligning yourself with your heart and creating your brand around that, magic starts to really happen. So to me, you know, that is the benefit. That is one of the benefits, at least, that I personally have experienced. Would you like to share some more benefits with us?
Yeah, absolutely. But that is probably the biggest one, definitely, because and to me that's where I think your purpose is in your heart, and a bit like how an acorn is coded with an oak tree. I think we have the seed of our purpose in our hearts, and when we tune into our hearts and we meditate and we follow the things that really give us joy and light us up, we get sort of prompted with what the next step is, or what we need to choose. You know, does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. And I'm just wondering, Cathy, if it might be worth just taking a moment here, you've talked a lot about listening to your inner voice and guidance and meditation. Now, I know there's a lot of people that perhaps a little bit skeptical about meditation, maybe. It's something they've heard of. It's something that they know what it is, but for whatever reason choosing not to practice it at the moment. But are there some really simple steps that you could share to really help people begin to listen to that inner voice, you know, so that we can really connect with our hearts more than living in our heads? Where generally, I think the majority of the population really are living in their heads. And I know that I was fully in my head until even just a couple of years ago.
I think probably for a lot of people, getting out into nature, that would be a big one, because it's just about noticing what's around you and being in the present moment.
Gosh, we can learn so much from nature, can't we? You know, I always think, you know, nature's such a fabulous example. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because nature nothing's forced in nature. It just happens, you know. Whether we're talking about animals or living things, you know, it just happens by magic. It's a miracle. I mean, I've been watching the leaves on my tree as the season changes. A couple of days ago, I noticed a little tiny bud on the horse chestnut tree in my garden. And then as I was walking past at the end of my garden, taking my daughter to school, I thought, oh my goodness me, in just 2 days, there are leaves. And those leaves didn't have to push to appear. They just allow. And that's it, yeah. A big difference. And I think we've really been conditioned that, we need to push. So I guess this is also where you talk about the feminine power.
Yes, because that's nature too, isn't it? It's like kind of the feminine principle. And it's also, it brings me back to that sort of acorn oak tree analogy as well. The acorn doesn't have to try to become the oak tree. It just has to be in the right conditions for it to grow, and it will just effortlessly and naturally grow into what it's meant to become. And I think for us, it's our head and all the self-talk, the negative self-talk that gets in the way and stops us actually becoming who we're meant to be. So when you can quieten the mind, that natural, effortless way of being will just come out.
It's about listening to it as well. I think something that I've learnt very much over the years is that little voice, that inner voice that's been guiding me. It's been very quiet, and quite often I have chosen not to listen to it. So it's about, I guess first of all being aware that that voice is there. It absolutely is, and then paying attention to it and really tuning into what it's saying.
And following it. When you actually follow it, and then you get a response to its guidance, and then you find that it was something that's really worked for you, and it sort of builds up a muscle. So it's, I do quite a lot of journaling. That's another really good way of getting. You want to bypass the conscious mind and the negative sort of inner critic, and just write what comes from within. That's a really good way of connecting with the heart. And also just following your breath and watching your body, getting into your body, doing anything that you can do that makes space around your thoughts will allow that voice to be a bit louder, because you're making everything quieter so that you can listen to it. But you need to ask yourself questions, and then you'll find an answer from the heart. So if you don't ask questions, you kind of, it's much harder to sense that guidance. But if you're asking, okay, what next, what do I need to do to be able to achieve X, Y, Z, or where do I need to go? Do you know what I mean? It's we actually got to give ourselves something to answer.
Great stuff. And I guess those questions, it's far better if we ask an open question as opposed to a closed question with a yes or no response.
Yeah.
To really stimulate the answer to come through.
That's right.
Gosh, we went slightly off on a tangent there, because I'd really like to talk a little bit more about the branding aspect, because I know this is obviously, part of your really big purpose and your passion as well. If you were just starting out in business, Cathy, where would you recommend somebody start with the branding aspect?
I would look at your story.
Okay.
I think that is
coming back to that, doesn't it? And I think there's evidently a key there. And I think, one of the things that I'd just like to say, if that's okay, is, we need to really value our story. It's part of who we are. And I think quite often we look at our significant life experiences and things that we have been through in the duration of our life. We kind of push it aside, and we're not bringing it into our business as... we're not bringing all of us into our business. And I think this is the difference that really does make the difference. So, yeah, okay, tell us a little bit more. How do we know which part of our story?
Well, I think the thing about branding is it is a journey. It's
Okay.
I use an analogy about Michelangelo when he was asked how does he create such beautiful angels from the marble, and he says he sees the angel in the marble and then he cuts away everything around it, so he's revealing the brand. And I feel that that's what we do when we've got a vision that we can go for. That's one thing, and that's partly connected with this inner vision and inner guidance and your purpose. But the other is cutting away what's not who you are. And I think when you go through challenges in life, you get much clearer about who you are all the time. You're always moving in a direction of growth and letting the bits go of you that aren't who you are. So your story, some of the things that you will have been through, that your ideal clients are going to be struggling with too, and you're sharing your story with your ideal clients when they can resonate with you, that authentic part of you. Sorry, your dog's really putting me off.
I'm so
Can
sorry.
hear him barking. That's all right. It really, really makes you stand out as different. So nobody's got your story, and when you can communicate it and you're sharing everything about who you are, then that there's nobody like you. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about bringing that whole uniqueness out, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so incredibly powerful. So would you say that if you were just starting out, really paying attention to your story, spending time with yourself, perhaps maybe even writing down what your story is, and really connecting, I guess, to who you are, and sort of looking at some of those significant life experiences that have brought you to where you are today?
Absolutely. There's a friend of mine who I was just talking to the other day, and so as an example, she's someone who's struggled with her eyesight her whole life, and although that's nothing to do with her business, she's an amazing healer. But if she talks about, for her, through her journey, she has learned to start to create a business that's really promising, and she's learning all the actual business know-how, but she's doing this with a real, it's an impairment. I don't have to suffer with not being able to see my monitor properly, and these are real disabilities. If it would be for me, but so she's now got this skill that's probably unconscious to her. She just does it. But for her to be able to then target people who are visually impaired, she totally knows what they're struggling with, and she can totally help them if they've got a vision to create a business for themselves, but they just see blocks. She has got the answers for them to move through that. I mean, this isn't necessarily what she's going to do, but this is just how I see that she has some huge value, and that's a very, potentially quite a big, unique, very specific market that she can totally help, because she just knows how to do it herself. A lot of these things we're really unconscious of,
Yeah, absolutely. That is so empowering, and thank you for sharing it, because I think sometimes the fear is that when we look at our story, we may see the negative in there, and that could potentially become very disempowering, but it's about looking about how we can turn that around to really feel empowered by that, and how that has really enabled us to be who we've become, and how we can grow and move forward from there. So, I'm a great believer in everything happens for a reason as well. So the other thing that I'm really interested in, you talk about branding being a journey. So, we've talked about what would be a really great starting point if you're new to business. What about if we've been in business some time and maybe we feel that we're not quite in alignment? Any tips or thoughts, anything that you'd like to share around this whole aspect of, branding being a journey? Because obviously people change, we change, but we can't constantly keep changing our branding every 5 minutes. So I'm just curious about your thoughts around that, really, Cathy.
I think when you got really clear about what your core brand is, and you know who you are and what your message is, everything else would kind of fit under that. And so it gives you, sharing your journey with your tribe is really important too, because they can see that you're not the perfect finished article, as they aren't. So that creates a real connection too, and that's about being vulnerable and being authentic. And it's a bit like what I was saying about your masterpiece is it's a life journey, cutting away the bits that aren't who you are. And as you get clearer and clearer, your brand it gets sharper, and when you know yourself better, you can communicate that who you are better, you will attract the right kind of people, and everything gets much more in flow. So I think that when you get your brand together, as in your visual brand identity, if it makes you feel really confident because it encapsulates who you are, then get out there and share it and really go with it. But just bear in mind that you are going to grow and change, and different things are going to come your way, and eventually you will have to update your brand because you'll have outgrown it. So as long as you kind of are aware of that, just bear that in mind as part of your business plan, I suppose.
I love that,
it's
Cathy.
Something that happens, yeah.
Yeah, we're all constantly evolving, and we're not the finished article. I think that's so wonderful, and that ties in so much with what I was saying earlier about, I believe that women really are stepping into owning their power and being more comfortable. Well, I call it being, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but sharing your vulnerability a little bit more, and not being that perfect, striving for that perfection all the time, because really that's what can hold us back. That's what can really stop us from reaping the benefits of the value that we have to offer the world in what it is that we do. We spend so much time trying to perfect everything, or sitting behind a computer screen rewriting the script or your sales copy or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
When we could be out there making a massive difference, and not only our clients benefiting, but us benefiting as well. So I think there's something very, very powerful in this whole just relaxing into who we're being and allowing ourselves to evolve. But the core part of our brand will never leave us. I love the way that you communicated that. And I guess, from my own journey, from my clients' journey, from the people that I mix with in Winning Women, I see this all the time. I think we're a little bit hard on ourselves. It's kind of like we really feel as if we need to have it all sorted, and we just don't. If we just relax into who we are and where we are today and go with that, our message will constantly evolve, because the feedback that we generate from the people that we work with helps us to really solidify our message as well.
Absolutely. I think we're quite different as well, because some people have really strong big visions that are far-reaching. I know that your vision for Global Winning Women is we've talked about it, and I don't have such a long-reaching kind of vision. I've never, because I've been such a traveller in the past, I never used to be able to see past the end of the year. So that's changing now. But the thing with following my heart and my intuition, it's really bringing a path. It's taken me along a path that I could never have imagined to be so amazing. So I think there's a bit of both in here. Some people really have a strong calling that they know they're meant to do, and that they're following their guidance step by step, perhaps towards that. And other people are less clear. And I know it's important to have goals to where you want to get to, because it keeps you going, gives you momentum, and you get those feelings of success as you keep moving forward and growing. But not to get too hung up on I've got to have a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan. It's as long as you follow what has real heart and meaning for you, you'll be going in the right direction.
I totally resonate with that, Cathy. And I'd love to ask a little bit more about some of the programs that you offer, in as much as, when you're working with people, obviously there's the visual side of the brand, but the heart side as well. And, are you willing to just share a little bit about how you work with people on your programs?
My Brand from the Heart program is like my core program, what it does is it goes into finding out who we really are beyond the masks, and parts of it, again, it's back to the story. We find out what's the real value in your story that you can share, and that you're the absolute genius in, because there's things that we as we grow up, the things that perhaps we managed to cope with as children that have gone into our unconscious mind. There's things that are, so obvious to all our friends and family that we're brilliant at, and we just can't see it because it's something we just do. Finding those kind of things. So we work on who you are, we work on what's your vision, we work on identifying who your ideal clients are, and we look at what's all of the mindset stuff that stops you really shining your light.
Really
and then,
holistic.
It goes very deep. And, once you've got that, then you're in a position to start thinking about brand identity, because it's a bit like the iceberg, I see the brand identity as the bit on the top, but it's the depth of who you are and getting really clear about what's important to you, and your values are so important. And that's all the bit that's underneath.
Right.
When you communicate from that energy, creating the brand identity is relatively more of a simple process, I think, because you just know who you are, and that comes through when you're communicating. I mean, obviously they've got to resonate and be in alignment, because you can't have who you are in person be completely different to how your visual is, because it makes incongruence for people when they encounter you and encounter your brand. So as long as they're aligned, then it's you're gonna be able to communicate who you are to people, and they will get you, and they will know that you get them. But yes, I think I love working on that depth part before I actually do the branding, the brand identity.
Brilliant.
But that's kind of the process. And I do that. I'm actually taking that core program into an online version as well. But I do that with my VIP clients. Everybody goes through that first, and then we follow that up with a coaching program or a marketing program, depending on what they need, because it's all about what suits them, really. Some people are really ready to just get out there, and their business is just about to pop, and they just needed some tweaks and alignments, and then they can go. And other people are really starting out from scratch and don't know, what they're wanting or where they're going. So I help them get clear about that too.
So I'm really feeling that it's very holistic, the way that you work with people, and, you're really identifying what the individual's needs are, and creating programs to match that as well. Cathy, we are running out of time very quickly here, but I want to make sure that people can connect with you. Now, I know on your website that you've got a free video course. I think that's right. Tell people where they can find out about that and find out more about you.
My free video e-course, it's called The 7 Keys to Pleasurable, Profitable and Purposeful Business. Mm-hmm. So that's on my website. And so you can find me at cathyballard.com. And it's Cathy, that's CATHY, BALLARD, cathyballard.com. And you can find me on Facebook too.
Fabulous.
And of course, you can find me at Winning Women. Absolutely.
And there's a Facebook page for that as well, isn't there? The Winning Women Central London.
Yes, and that group's growing so quickly at the moment. It's so full of amazing women. So, if people are in London and they want to come and connect, it would be fantastic to have them come and join us.
Oh, Cathy, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, having this opportunity to have this chat. I really, really do thank you. There's been so much wisdom in what you've shared. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me.
Well, absolutely. It was my utmost pleasure. It really was. And I've had so much fun and lots of things. One thing that I just did want to mention that you were so in flow earlier, but just very quickly, when we were talking about aligning with our heart, and you talked that there's been a lot of research out there. One of the resources that people might like to go and have a look at, or to do a Google search around heart math.
Yes.
So take a Google.
Heart Math Institute, I think it's called.
I think you're right. I believe it is Institute. So, but yes, take a little bit of coffee break and have a look on Google and see if you can find some information there as well. And then also, please do check Cathy out. I should be delighted to connect with you, I know. So, Cathy, thanks once again, and bye for now.
Thanks, bye.